purrs. Imagine the roaring 20s. Jazz clubs are buzzing, hemlines are rising, and on Wall Street, fortunes are being made overnight. It's an era of unprecedented prosperity, but beneath the glittering surface, a dark undercurrent of greed is pulling unsuspecting investors into a financial whirlpool. This is the story of one of the most audacious scams of the decade, a tale of ambition, deceit, and the spectacular collapse of Fred Stern and Company. In the heart of New York City, Fred Stern, a man with a sharp suit and an even sharper mind, was building an empire. His company dealt in something seemingly mundane, rubber. But in the 1920s, with the automobile industry booming, rubber was black gold, demand was skyrocketing, and prices were volatile, creating the perfect playground for a master manipulator. Stern wasn't just a rubber dealer, he was a visionary, or so it seemed. He saw an opportunity not just to trade rubber, but to control its price. He began a massive campaign, buying up huge quantities of rubber contracts, effectively trying to corner the market. His logic was simple. If he owned enough of the future supply, he could dictate the price and make a fortune. To fund this colossal gamble, he needed a lot of it. This is where the story takes a dark turn. Stern, along with his associates, began approaching banks and brokerage houses not just for loans, but for a devious scheme involving fraudulent warehouse receipts. Here's how it worked. A company would typically store its goods, like rubber, in a secure warehouse. The warehouse would then issue a receipt, a legal document proving ownership of that specific quantity of goods. Banks would happily lend money against these receipts because they represented real, tangible assets. If the borrower defaulted, the bank could seize the goods. But what if the receipts were fake? What if they represented rubber that simply didn't exist? That was the heart of the Fred Stern and Company fraud. They created a vast web of counterfeit and duplicated warehouse receipts. They would present a receipt for, say, 1,000 tons of rubber to one bank, get a loan, and then use a forged copy of the same receipt to get another loan from a different bank. They were borrowing millions against phantom assets. The rubber wasn't in the warehouse, it was only on paper. For a while, the scheme was wildly successful. Money poured in, and Stern used it to fuel his speculation in the London rubber market. He became a major player, his name whispered with a mix of awe and suspicion. He was bidding up the price of rubber, and as long as the price kept climbing, his paper empire looked solid. Investors and lenders saw the rising rubber prices and believed Stern was a genius. They felt secure, thinking their loans were backed by an asset that was only growing in value. But markets are fickle, and what goes up must often come down. The British government, concerned about the soaring price of rubber, took action. They adjusted their policies to increase the supply of rubber flowing into the market. Suddenly, the scarcity that Stern had been banking on evaporated. The price of rubber, which had been his greatest ally, began to plummet. This was the beginning of the end. As the price crashed, Stern's lenders got nervous. They started calling in their loans and asking to see the collateral, the rubber that supposedly backed their millions. They sent inspectors to the warehouses, receipts in hand, ready to verify the inventory, and they found nothing. Or, at least, nowhere near the amounts listed on the receipts. The warehouses were mostly empty. The horrifying truth dawned on them. They had been lending money against thin air. The elaborate house of cards that Fred Stern had built with forged paper and sheer audacity came crashing down. The news hit Wall Street like a thunderclap. In January 1926, the scandal broke wide open. Fred Stern and Company declared bankruptcy, revealing an astonishing level of debt over $30 million, which would be billions in today's money. It was one of the largest bankruptcies of its time, sending shockwaves through the financial community. The fallout was immense. Dozens of banks and brokerage firms, from small local operations to major Wall Street players, faced catastrophic losses. Some were pushed to the brink of collapse. The trust that underpins the entire financial system was shattered. How could a fraud of this magnitude happen right under their noses? Investigations were launched, and the full extent of the conspiracy was uncovered. Fred Stern and his key accomplices were arrested and faced a barrage of charges, including grand larceny and forgery. The trials were a media sensation, captivating a public fascinated by the story of high-flying financiers brought low by their own greed. Fred Stern was ultimately convicted. The man who had once dreamed of controlling a global commodity market was sent to prison, his name becoming synonymous with financial crime. The scandal served as a brutal wake-up call. It exposed glaring weaknesses in the financial system, particularly the lack of verification for warehouse receipts. It was a painful lesson that forced banks and regulators to implement stricter controls and more rigorous auditing procedures. The Fred Stern and Company fraud is more than just a historical footnote. It's a timeless cautionary tale. It reminds us that behind the allure of quick riches and market wizardry, the simple principles of trust and verification are paramount. Shows how easily confidence can be manipulated and how quickly a speculative bubble, inflated by lies, can burst, leaving devastation in its wake. This scandal was a dramatic prelude to the even greater financial storm that was gathering on the horizon. Just a few years later, the speculative frenzy of the Roaring Twenties would culminate in the Great Crash of 1929, plunging the world into the Great Depression. The story of Fred Stern is a powerful reminder that in the world of finance, diligence is not just a virtue, it's a necessity. The ghosts of those empty warehouses still haunt Wall Street, a chilling testament to one of the most brazen frauds in American history. Thank you for watching. If you found this story fascinating, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into historical events that shaped our world. See you in the next video.